Hello, and thank you for joining us today in our studies of Second Kings. Today we're in Second Kings chapter 14. And in this chapter, we read about the reign of Amaziah in the south, and also a little bit about the reign of Jeroboam in the north. And so let's go through and look at a few things that we can pull out from these two kings that will help us when it comes to both our understanding of the times, but also of our own desire to serve God. First of all, when we come to Amaziah, early on in chapter 14, we see Amaziah as he cements his reign, as he cements himself on the throne of Judah. He is going to have to take care of a problem. That problem is that there are those of the servants of his father Joash who were responsible for his murder. And so Amaziah is going to have to deal with these particular individuals. Now, normally, in most kingdoms, the response would be to take care of those who committed the crimes, but also to destroy their entire families as well. Yet Amaziah doesn't do this. Amaziah instead follows the law of Moses. And it is stated beginning in verse 5 that when Amaziah executed the servants who had done these things, that he did so according to the law, and that he did not execute their children and their families as well, because the law says, fathers shall not be put to death for their children, nor shall children be put to death for their fathers, but a person shall be put to death for his own sin. And so Amaziah is going to follow the law when it comes to this particular crime. And the families are not going to be held responsible for the conspiracy of the fathers. Now, Amaziah is not going to be perfect in his following of the law. You see in the earlier verses that he is going to be a good king, he is going to be a righteous king, but he's going to follow it after the shadow of Joash instead of David. And so, because of that, Joash did not remove the places of idolatrous worship in Judah. Amaziah is not going to do that either. Those places are going to remain, and people are going to be able to continue to utilize those in service to idols. And so, idolatrous worship in Judah is going to continue, even if it isn't going to be prevalent. But the second thing that we notice with Amaziah comes down a few verses in verse 11. And that is, the longer that Amaziah is on the throne, Amaziah begins to have a problem with pride. Amaziah is going to defeat the Edomites. He is going to put the Edomites somewhat under his thumb. He is going to have several victories that are going to take place. And he's going to set his sights on the northern kingdom of Israel. Now, the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom have not had any love for each other, nor have they had any major affinity for each other the majority of the time that they have been in existence since the split of Jeroboam from Rehoboam after the days of Solomon. And yet, there hasn't been necessarily this continuous desire to go and to conquer the other. Except here. Amaziah is going to go and he is going to attempt to conquer the northern kingdom of Israel, to bring it under his control. And yet Jehoash, who is the king of Israel, is going to send a very flowery speech about why it is he should not be attempting to do this, and why it is he needs to drop it, he needs to let it go, because it's going to turn out poorly. Amaziah refuses to let it go, and it is going to turn out poorly. As a matter of fact, Amaziah's army is going to be soundly defeated, and they will be returned to their homes. Now, for some, they look at this and say, but one was a follower of God and one was not. That is true. And yet there were also promises that were made pertaining to the division of the kingdom. And there were things that God had said when it came to the existence of the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. And it was also a matter of fact that Amaziah did not ask God what he should do. And he did not ask God what God wanted him to do. Amaziah's pride caused him to be puffed up and to do things his own way, and to do things on his own, no matter what anybody else said, because he was the king. Amaziah's pride is going to be dented here in the situation that takes place with Jehoash. As a matter of fact, Jehoash is going to come in. He is going to break down part of the wall of Jerusalem, and he is actually going to sack Jerusalem instead. So Amaziah's pride is going to cost him more than just lost lives in battle. It is going to cost him dearly financially because of the losses that are going to be accrued with Jehoash's plunder. But one more thing I want us to notice at the end of chapter 14, and that is I want us to see the information that is given, or some of the information given, about Jeroboam. Now, this can cause some confusion for some people, because we read about Jeroboam back in 1 Kings, and that he is the one who is the first king of the northern kingdom of Israel. Well, this is simply another king of the same name. This is Jeroboam the second. And Jeroboam the second is going to be very much like Jeroboam the first. It is interesting that Jeroboam II is going to reign for 41 years. He's going to be on the throne for 4 decades, and yet there's only a couple of paragraphs about him in Scripture. What we do know about Jeroboam is that Jeroboam is going to follow after his forefather, Jeroboam the first. Forefather is king, not necessarily forefather by blood. He is going to follow in the footsteps of Jeroboam the first in the way that he leads Israel and in the things that he encourages Israel to do, which are against the law of God. But we also have the introduction of another individual here in this particular chapter, and that is the man who is known as Jonah, the son of Amittai. We might know him from the book of Jonah, where we have Jonah and the great fish. But he is actually introduced here in 2 Kings chapter 14 and verse 25. And so we know very little about the days of Jeroboam II, very little about what it is that is going on in the northern kingdom of Israel, because we just have a couple of paragraphs to cover 40 years. And yet, Jeroboam, we know enough to know that Jeroboam, while he is going to restore territory to Israel, he is not going to be one who is going to have the blessings of God behind him due to his actions. These are some of the things that I've noticed in 2 Kings chapter 14. I hope that they're beneficial to you. Next time we'll come back and we will begin looking at 2 Kings chapter 15. I hope that you'll join us then. But until then, have a great day.